Let's do a quick review for Thincentral Lesson 3.6 for your homework. In this lesson we're going to be using models, an area model specifically, to multiply fractions together. So it's quite a difficult model because you really have to visualize it. So looking at this model shows 1 3/4 times 1 2/3. What unit fraction does each of the smaller rectangles represent? So let's take a look at the model. Here you have your whole number. So if you look at that, that actually should separate these into two. But you have two numbers here. This is your whole. So this is your one whole right here. And this is your 2/3 right here. That's your 2/3. So 1 2/3. And then on this side, you can see here that you have your one whole is, one whole would be 4/4, so it would be like that. That would be your one whole that way, and this would be your 3/4 here, 3/4 this way. But they don't show it that way, they show it as 7/4. So what they do is they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8/4 is two wholes, so, and they've highlighted 7 of them blue. So broke it down a little bit further. They have 1 3/4, and that's equal to 7/4, and you've got your 7/4 over here, and then you've got 1 2/3, which is 5/3, and you've got those going this way here. So you're multiplying 7/4 times 5/3. So what does each of these little smaller rectangles represent? Well, there are actually 35 of them, and each of those is a 1/12. Because if you look at the parts here for the holes, you have in one hole, it's really hard to see in this model, that is one hole. That's a 1 by 1, so this is your one hole here, and this is your one hole here. So in each hole, there are 12 little rectangles in each hole. So each of these little rectangles represents 1/12. So continuing with what we did on the previous problem, now they're asking us to multiply it together. So we've already done that, but so 1 3/4 times 1 2/3, that's going to equal to, well, you have to rewrite it again. So you have 7/4 times 5/3, so that's going to end up being 35/12, and that's going to simplify down into, I'll just draw this here. You can see how many 12ths you have. You have 12 12ths here, you have 9 12ths here, you have 8 12ths here, and you have 6 12ths here. So that turns into 30. That's 35/12, and then 35/12 simplifies into 2 and 11/12. I personally don't like this model all that much. The model that I prefer is to do a partial product model. So if I have 1 here and 3/4 here, and I have 1 here and 2/3 here, I like to split them. I go 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2/3 is 2/3, 1 times 3/4 is 3/4, and 3/4 times 2/3 is 6/12. And then I add those up, and I get my answer using common denominator. So that's the way that I like to solve these. To me, it just seems easier, but actually it's harder to do in terms of time, but it's easier to understand exactly what you're multiplying together. Let's unpack the problem. They're asking us to find the product by rewriting each mixed number as a fraction. So 9/10 is already a proper fraction. You're going to multiply that by 1 1/5. So parts times wholes plus parts. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6, and that turns into 6/5. And then I multiply across. Now one thing to keep in mind is cross canceling, is that's when you it's a slash dash where you simplify before you multiply. I know 6 and 10 have a common factor of 2, so I can divide them each by 2, and that gives me a simpler number to multiply. So it turns into 27/25, and that's going to equal 1 2/25. If you didn't simplify first, you'd end up with 54/50, and that would simplify to 1 4/50, which then you'd simplify down to 1 2/25. Same problem as previously, but this time I decided to draw a model. You have 1 7/8. So here I'm going to go ahead and draw you the 7/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One more. 7/8. So I will be shading in 7/8 of those, like that. And then here I have one hole, so that whole thing is shaded, and 2/5. So I split these into fifths, and I shade 2/5 of them. It's a little messy, but hopefully you can see what I did. I shaded in 2/5 of the second square, the whole of that square, and then I shaded in 7/8 going this way. Now doing the multiplication, changing them into fractions. 7/8 times parts times wholes plus parts is 7/5. And I multiply across, and I end up with 49/40. Simplify that. 40 goes into 49 one whole time. There's 9/40 left over. So this changes into 7/5, and you multiply those across to get 1 9/40. Now let's unpack this problem, problem number 7. I'm not doing every single one. I've skipped a couple because they're just basically the same thing as we did on the other problem. So represent the problem with an equation. So we're going to pick an equation here that matches this. Sarah built a pen for her rabbits. So I'm going to draw. You always draw pictures. And the pen measures 2 1/6 by 1 1/2. So 2 1/6 times 1 1/2 is the area of the pen. That's how much space is inside the pen in yards. So this is not multiplication, that's minus. This one looks right to me. The area is 2 1/6 times 1 1/2. This one here is division, and this is adding. So area is multiplication, length times width. You have the length here, and you have the width. So now we're going to multiply across. We can do 2 1/6. That simplifies to 13/6, or convert it into an improper fraction, times 3/2. And look for a cross cancel here. I see 3 and 6. They both have a common factor of 3. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 6 twice. So this turns into 13/4, 13/4, which is the same as 3 1/4 square yards. Let's do this problem again, but using a partial products model. You'd have, whoops, didn't mean to do that. You'd have 1 1/2 here. Here's your 1, and here's your half. And then you have 2 here, and 1/6. So this is your 2, and this is your 1/6 down here. So 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 1/2 is 1. 1 times 1/6 is 1/6. 1/6 times 1/2 is 1/12. And if you add all those up, you get 3 plus 1/6 plus 1/12. And that's going to be 3 plus 2/12 plus 1/12, which is 3 3/12. And that can be simplified down to 1/4 by dividing each numerator and denominator by 3. So the answer is 3 1/4 there, that way too. Many ways to do it. I prefer the partial products method. But the improper fraction method is probably faster and easier as long as you simplify. But it doesn't really have a model to go with it. We're going to unpack this problem. X is going to be the amount of water in a bucket. A bucket holds 2 2/3 gallons of water. So here's our bucket. And it's going to hold 2 2/3, the whole thing. So this whole thing here is 2 2/3, but it's only 5/6 full. So if I were to cut this into sixths, it would be 5/6 full. So I'm taking 5/6 of 2 2/3. So let me multiply 5/6 times 2 2/3. And that would be, no, flow, cross those out, those don't make any sense. That's our equation. So we have 5 6 times 8/3 because parts times wholes plus parts. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2 is 8. 8/3. Again, look for the cross cancel. Both of these have a common factor of 2. So dividing them both by 2 gives me 3 and 4. And that turns into 20 over 9. 9 goes into 20 2 whole times, and there's 2 9ths left over. So if that bucket is 5 6 full, it holds 2 2/9 gallons of water. I'd always remember to work hard. We work hard in 2627. This is hard work, and we like hard work. So make sure you're asking for any help needed, and making sure you're clicking the turn in button on your homework. Submit it. Thank you.